But if I have the Suzanne head clicked and I then click the texture paint button, I can of course start painting immediately. If I click the cycles button, which puts us in cycles render mode, we see the same layer right here. And then click cycles to go back to Blender render mode. So if we click add color to add another layer, and say we make this blue or something, and I'll just draw all over these. So we can see these two layers fine if we are in Blender render mode, but when we click cycles, we'll notice that we're only seeing this color layer. So if I click on this other color layer, then we notice we only see this one. The main zero brush dependency is that only one of each type of these layers can be displayed at a time in cycles mode, whereas in Blender render mode you can have as many as you want. So if I were to add a bump layer and do something like this, I could add another bump layer and do something like that, and we'll see that when I change the bumpiness, that layer is independent of that other layer. Now, in cycles, the bump layers don't display at all in the 3D view, but they will show up when we go to render or render preview. So I'll press my render preview button, and we'll see that we see the color layer and the bump layer at the same time. So I could add a specular layer here while in cycles and paint on something like this. Turn off cycles by clicking this button, and we see that same specular layer here in Blender render mode looking fine. What you can do is create as many as you want, mix them, and change their blends, change their settings, and then still have them available for cycles mode. So for instance, I could add an alpha mask, maybe turn my hardness up and select my line tool and select my paint through button, cut a couple of strips straight through this Suzanne head, and you'll see even while in cycles that this layer works exactly the same as it does in Blender render mode. So we get one of each one of these layers all working at the same time in cycles, but only one at a time. Now there is a workaround for this which allows us to see all the color layers at once when we're in cycles. So I'll click the cycles button off. So currently I have just two color layers, one with this orange paint on it and one with this blue paint on it. I'll go ahead and click add color and make another one. Maybe make this one green. And I'll turn my paint through off and select regular brush stroke there. And so we've just got this third layer here. Go ahead and move it up with the other color layers just to stay organized. So we have these three color layers now. We can only see one chosen at a time. And you'll notice too, we don't have access to the turning off the visibility of layers. Cycles to go back. What we can do is select options and then new merged layer. And the new merged layer will merge all the color layers into one layer. We can also decide which layers we want to merge by deselecting the layers we don't want. So say we just wanted this blue and orange to merge, we would turn off the visibility of this one, go to options and select new merged layer. I'm going to go ahead and drop down the size. You can also change the resolution of your new merged layer. And this comes in handy when you're working on assets for video games, and say you've got like 4 or 5 different color layers and all kinds of different textures and stuff going on in blending modes. So you can really fine-tune the way your material looks, and then when you're ready to merge it all and export it, you can go to options and you can make the resolution lower if you need be, and click new merged layer. And I'll go ahead and click that. And you'll see this new one that I made that's 512 pixels by 512 is quite a bit blurrier. But when we went to options and click new merge layer, I'll expand this a little bit, we get this new layer called color merged. And if I turn its visibility off and on, it doesn't look like anything's happening, and that's because the 2 layers that compose it are still visible. So if I click the buttons to turn them off, we'll just see that one. And this one, of course, is much lower resolution. We set it at 512, whereas its brothers are at 2048. But once you have that merged layer, you can click on cycles and be able to see both of these at the same time. If you merge it at the same resolution that it's composed, like so say 2048 by 2048, which is what the other layers were, it'll look exactly the same. So once again, that's a workaround for using that in cycles. Also, it's a really good way to reduce sizes on your video game assets and things like that, all the while keeping behind a main file where you keep all your individual layers. So if you need to come back and tweak them, or do some work to them or brush them up or whatever, you can, and then merge those layers down by just going to options and new merged layer.